Speaking of heavy rains that lashed the southern part of the Kruger National Park have forced some parts of the world-renowned park to be closed. Guests have now been advised not to use gravel roads and to stay on the tar. They've also been warned not to open roads that have been closed. But how bad is the situation? Let's get the latest now from Ike Phaahla, who speaks on behalf of the South African National Parks. And he joins us from here in Johannesburg. Now, Ike, you just flew in from Kruger to Joburg a short while ago. Tell us what it looked like, or what it was like, getting to the airport at Kruger Park, which we know is a very, very busy airport. And what did it look like from the air?
I'm still muted.
Okay.
Good afternoon,
Okay,
Marcel.
go ahead. Hi, thanks, Ike.
Still muted. Yes. Well, I flew out of the Skukuza airport, which is in Skukuza, and the road between the airport and the rest camp, as well as the admin offices, was not passable. So we had to go through the Shalati Bridge, over the Sabi Bridge, and onto the airport. So it was quite difficult, but we managed to make it. And flying up, you can see that there's quite a lot of water. The rivers, especially the perennial ones, are flowing very strongly. So it is quite a difficult situation. But remember that we have some experience since 2000 when we had the devastating floods. So since then, we've established a disaster management committee of people that are well experienced, and they have been helping us to open some of the roads. The road between Skukuza, the Paul Kruger Gate, and Skukuza Rest Camp, yesterday it was completely closed, but they went through, our technical services guys went through, removed the debris to let the water inlet flow, and that road is now open. However, we have 4 camps that are isolated: Lower Sabi, Satara, Biamiti, and Talamati. But we are in constant contact with the guests who are staying there, as well as our staff. We have a small window today getting the report from the technical team to remove some of the people from Lower Sabi and make sure that they exit through the Orpen Gate, and that operation is currently underway as we speak. No major damage to infrastructure except the road having been washed off between Lower Sabi and Skukuza, and of course some low-lying bridges have been damaged. The assessment will be done once the water has subsided.
I'm just looking at some of the visuals and pictures on social media, and the Sabi River is extremely swollen, and she looks very, very powerful. I suppose the last thing you also need is for some of our Kruger Park visitors that we know who decide that, listen, I've got the latest 4x4, it's got all the bells and whistles, I've done this before, I can get you across the river. That's probably the last thing you want right now. How difficult has it been communicating to people in various parts of what we forget is a very, very vast park during a situation like this?
We have been communicating with them via social media, and others we've sent messages down to the camp managers themselves. But as you know, people are impatient. This morning we had to rescue one person who you can describe as somebody that thought this 4x4 is going to be able to come through the bridge at Lower Sabi. They got stuck. Fortunately, there was calamity was averted. We managed to get them through safely. But we still urge people not to take chances on low-lying bridges, regardless of the car that you are driving, and do cooperate with our people on the ground. Our rangers are out there, and they're doing the best they can to guide people through.
I'm sure your team is in constant communication. Obviously, you've said with your technical team, but also with the South African Weather Service for what the outlook is like. What are you expecting in terms of heavy rains? Apparently, today still heavy rains, but what's the outlook for the next couple of days, and how are you planning around that?
It definitely informs our planning, and we have our specialist, Dr. Eddie Riddell, is the one that keeps the watch and communicates with the weather service, and it doesn't look good in the next 3 days. So we're going to be watching the situation very closely. We explained that it's very fluid. Sometimes it does stop for a while. The water subsides for 2-3 millimeters, and then once again we have rivers that come upstream and get into the river system in the Kruger Park. So it's a situation that is very fluid, but we're watching it very closely.
You've said, thankfully, no lives at huge risk, except the one a person that was in a precarious position today. No damage to infrastructure as yet. What are you hearing from your rangers and people on the ground? What kind of damage do we expect in terms of animal life and just the park in general as well, with this amount of water flowing?
Well, the animals, one has to really say that they are the first one that sense when there's imminent danger.
Indeed.
And they move to higher ground. So we don't expect problems on that side. What we are concerned about is the road infrastructure. It is also our tourism infrastructure. Low-lying bridges, we have some of them which are underwater, but we won't be able to do the assessment until the water has completely subsided. We have 2 parts of the road which have been swept away between Lower Sabi and Skukuza, and we will only be able to do a full assessment after that. That road has been closed to traffic. Many roads, I have to say, the gravel roads especially, have been closed because it is quite dangerous for people to get onto these roads. We ask people to please stay on the tarred roads. If the road is closed, there's a no entry sign. Do not remove the barrier and try and drive through.
Just in closing, Ike, as with the rest of the tourism industry, Kruger Park really trying to get its wheels turning and get back to business and get visitors back in. Of course, we had security issues a few months ago as well. How busy is the park right now? Because this would still be seen as a bumper part of the season in terms of local as well as international visitors. I'm sure the hope is that this kind of thing won't impact those numbers too much. Kruger Park, of course, being a jewel in the crown for South Africa's tourism industry.
Definitely. I'm happy to report, Marcel, that when we looked at the figures for the festive season starting the 16th of December, up until the 16th of January, we were up by about 87%. We're hoping that we will reach pre-COVID numbers. But South Africans and international tourists have really supported us during the festive season. And we advise people that with this situation, which is a natural phenomenon that we have no control over, is that they can rearrange their bookings and we can give them credit on their profiles, and then they can reschedule those visits. But we haven't had any cancellations. In fact, people are trying to get through to the park. All the gates are open in the south except Crocodile Bridge, which is underwater. So people are still more welcome, but they can't move around as freely as they would have been if we didn't have these rains. And we hope that they subside very soon and they can come and enjoy the nature, the splendor of the Kruger National Park.
That's very important information to get out there. Thank you so much for your time, as always, Ike Phaahla, spokesperson for the Kruger National Park, giving us the very latest with those very heavy floods flowing through the southern parts of the park.